Have you ever watched the late 90s Cartoon Network classic cartoon I Am Weasel? Despite being called I Am Weasel, the character I Am Weasel is the main character of the program. I Am Weasel with the initials I Am with his sometimes nemesis, sometimes friend IR Baboon. The run on joke is that I Am Weasel talks like a nobleman, while IR Baboon is a monkey guy with a big red ass, but he gets angry when people mock his ass, even though obviously he could cover it up with either sweatpants or panties that say juicy all over the sides. Anyway, if you've seen the show, it takes place in the jungle more or less for the most part. I went to the zoo myself because I was studying to be an elephantologist. If you don't know what elephantologists are, they're people who like to take elephant tusks and do unsightly things with them. So I was out in the Amazonian jungle when I came across a baboon and a weasel. I asked them where the nearest McDonald's was, but it didn't make any sense because I was out in the wild, in case you weren't listening. The baboon jumped all over me and he took his red butt cheeks and he pressed them against my face until my face was stuck inside of his butt cheeks and I could no longer breathe. When I woke up, I was inside of a McDonald's, curiously enough. I tried to go out through the side exit doors, but they were locked. I wasn't allowed to unlock them. Oh no. I looked at the counter and there was no employee behind the counter. However, when inspecting the actual counter, I noticed a VHS tape sitting upon it. The lost episode of I Am Weasel. Where am I going to find a VCR inside of the McDonald's jungle? I screamed to myself, realizing that if I was alone, it wouldn't matter if I screamed and I'd be better off conserving my energy, so that was a mistake. Well, I looked underneath the counter and there was a old 1990 CRT TV sitting there along with a VHS player. I plugged in the VCR and I put in the VHS tape, and admittedly, I'm not proud of this, but I jumped over the counter and I made myself some French fries. Surprisingly, there was still a bunch of fry oil, grease, and fat left over, animal lard, left over, but that stuff can last for years because it isn't biodegradable. Anyway, the stuff was probably left over from the 1970s, and I could tell something was not quite right because there were Howdy Doody Happy Meal toys sitting around. And again, I don't know if Happy Meals existed in the 70s. Howdy Doody's older than the 70s. Something wasn't quite right here. Anyway, I took a fry and bit into it and my upper teeth fell out. My two front teeth. I super glued them back inside and then I watched the program. The episode began with the usual I Am Weasel theme song. You don't need pants for the victory dance, 'cause Baboon's better than Weasel. IR Baboon is into... Listen, I don't know how to say this other than to say this, but a bunch of hentai characters flashed on screen, half naked, and then a giant worm appeared and devoured 2024 U.S. presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What was I watching? The worm introduced itself as IY Worm and then let out a giant belch before wiggling off screen. Upon closer inspection, before it was fully off, I could tell it was holding up a sign. The sign was in ancient hieroglyphics, and I don't know how to read that stuff, so I'll never know what the message really was. The meat of the episode began. And when it began, speaking of meat of the episode, I grilled up a 1980s Big Mac. I'm assuming that's when the meat was. It looked like it had earthworms crawling around in it, but that's neither here nor there. It's actually kind of green at this point, so I guess there was some mold upon it after all. So, I Am Weasel and IR Baboon were in the jungle. I Am Weasel introduces himself. I am Weasel, and I am looking to be the greatest elephantologist of all time. How did I Am Weasel know that I wanted to be an elephantologist? How did this tape know about me? Something did not seem to be quite right here. Just then, IR Baboon came in swinging across the screen with a vine George of the Jungle Tarzan style and knocked I Am Weasel right in his friggin' mouth. his red nose fell off. I was confused by this. There was realistic looking blood blurting out of his decapitated, I guess, but his head wasn't torn off, just his nose from his body. The blood was splurting everywhere. That's not McDonald's ketchup. I Am Weasel talked. Wasn't he supposed to be in pain? He just talked as if he was normal. He picked up his severed nose and he started chewing on it. Delicious, just like expired McDonald's meat, I Am Weasel said. I didn't want to watch this anymore. I turned off the tape. I picked up the tape. I threw it on the ground. I stomped all over it. And then I took the remaining tape and I attempted to make a makeshift noose out of it and strangle myself. I fell asleep because I was out of energy from having been in the jungle for 15 weeks with nothing but a canteen and some Ritz crackers. Not even the rotten McDonald's food could save me now. When I woke up, I was back in the jungle. I was all on the dirt, covered in dirt, with dirt all over me and maggots. I ate a maggot because I could use the protein at that point. I looked all around. I guess this was all just one great big hallucination, I said to myself, frizzled, unkempt, and disheveled. I decided that it was time to go back to town, knowing that I would never be a real elephantologist. Just then I heard a very loud stomping noise. I started to run away, but it picked up, and the more and more I went, the louder and louder it got. I turned around and holy crap, it was an elephant. It was an elephant in a leisure suit. I looked up at the jungle palm trees and there was a disco ball hanging from under the branches. It is time for the stampede of the disco elephants. The elephant talked, which was weird enough, but it sounded like I Am Weasel. The elephant started dancing like the Bee Gees and Staying Alive played out of a boombox. I don't even know where it was. It couldn't have been in the ground. It would have sounded muffled or something. Just then, two other elephants came out from behind the bushes and started dancing. One was blue and one was pink. I guess one was a boy and one was a girl, but I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental or, whatever. At that point, I realized there was something wrong here. I must have been dreaming or something. I pinched myself, but it hurt, and I didn't wake up, so I guess there wasn't a dream after all. I looked at the ground, and there were ancient hieroglyphics on the ground. I squinted really closely, and I noticed a picture of a worm and a brain, and the English letters RFK. RFK? Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? What was going on here? Michelin, I Am Elephant, I guess, said to me. How did he know my name was Michelin? Something you must understand is that the 70s and the 90s and now the 2020... Anyway, it doesn't matter. What you need to know is that time is an illusion. It is simply movement and change symbolized by the Greek letter delta. Likewise, if you look at ancient hieroglyphics, they are all symbolizing the same thing except for bloody animal sacrifice and obeisance to satisfy some god who was a mix of a bird head and a sphinx and I don't know, some sort of cat that ate fish heads and screamed and jumped on top of a fence and had sex with a worm, which is probably why you're looking at a picture of a worm, and maybe RFK is an abbreviation for some sort of ancient god, but it doesn't matter now, Michelin. What's important is that you followed your dreams. You didn't stand around and wait. You spent weeks out in the jungle. And you're having an hallucination, and you are dying, and you don't even know it. The world went black at that point. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. I was sitting in the bed. I had stitches over my earlobe. Apparently, someone shot it with an elephant gun, and they were aiming for something much worse than that. I was very fortunate to be alive. I was out somewhere in rural Pennsylvania the entire time, and I'd been drugged by someone or something. Apparently, my family had taken me to the local McDonald's, and it was the only McDonald's within a 50-mile radius, so there was nowhere else to eat, despite the fact that the food looked very unhealthy. Anyway, all I can tell you is if you find yourself out on the road in rural Pennsylvania at a McDonald's, the only one in sight with a I Am Weasel VHS tape sitting around, be careful because you don't know what sort of misdeeds you are. Oh my gosh, it's a worm! A giant worm is breaking into the hospital. I'm being strangled by a worm. It's eating my brain. It's crawling through my ears. Ooh, 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 ooh. Ich bin ein Berliner.